Why do native speakers say make a decision, but never do a decision?
But today you'll discover how to find these hidden patterns, record them properly, and actually remember them. Welcome to AI Inverse Educ. Let's master collocations together.
Have you ever learned a new English word and then used it in a sentence that felt completely wrong? Like saying make a rest instead of have a rest? That's a collocation error, and almost every learner makes them. In this lesson, you're going to learn exactly how to find, record, and remember natural English collocations, so you stop making those mistakes for good. Let's get started.
So, how do you actually find collocations? There are two strategies every good learner uses. The first one, train yourself to notice collocations as you read or listen. They're everywhere in real English. The second, use a learner's dictionary. Most dictionaries list the most common collocations right next to the definition, and that's a gold mine. Let's look at both of these in action. Here's a habit that will genuinely change how you learn vocabulary. Every time you read something in English, an article, an email, a website, don't just read for meaning. Look for the collocations. Keep a small notebook handy and jot them down. It takes 30 seconds, and over time, those notes become one of your most powerful learning tools. Start today, even with just one collocation from the next email you read.
Read this short paragraph about Tom's morning. As you read, I want you to look for the collocations, the natural word partnerships. Can you spot them before I highlight them? Giving his neighbor a lift, made his way, desperately wanted, taking care of, sharp pain, run a bath. 6 collocations in just 3 sentences. That's how dense real English is with natural combinations. The more you notice them, the more natural your own English will become. Now, let's look at the dictionary strategy. Imagine you look up the word sharp. You're not just looking for its meaning, you're hunting for collocations. And look what you find. A sharp pain, a sharp bend, a sharp contrast, a sharp rise. One single adjective, 4 different collocation patterns, completely different contexts. And that's just the beginning of the entry. This is why a good learner's dictionary is one of your best friends. Use it like a collocation map.
Here's a really important habit. When you look up a word, don't just note down one collocation and move on. Record several. Think about it. If you learn sharp pain and nothing else, you've only scratched the surface. But if you also record sharp contrast, sharp rise, sharp bend, now your vocabulary is growing in natural chunks, not isolated words. That's the difference between knowing a word and really knowing how to use it.
Section B. Now that you know how to find collocations, let's talk about the best way to record them. The number one mistake learners make is writing down a collocation in isolation, just the 2 words on their own. That's not enough. Always record a collocation inside a full phrase or sentence that shows how it's used. Look at these examples. I didn't have access to the confidential files. My tutor gave me a very helpful piece of advice. And underline the collocation so it stands out when you review your notes later.
Section C. This is where the real learning happens. Recording collocations is only half the job. You also need strategies to make them stick. There are 3 key principles here. 1. Revise regularly. Don't just write collocations down and forget them. Review your notebook often. 2. Practice in context. Use new collocations in your writing and speaking. That's what moves them from short-term to long-term memory. And 3. Group related collocations together. This one is powerful, and I'll show you exactly how it works on the next slide.
Let me show you the grouping strategy in action. Take the word way, just one simple word. Now look at how many collocations you can build around it. Find a way. Find your way. Learnt the hard way. Getting in your way. Give way. Every possible way. 6 completely different collocations, all anchored to one key word. When you group them like this in your notebook, you train your brain to see the patterns. One keyword becomes a whole network of natural English. That's how fluent speakers think.
Before we get to the exercises, let's pause on something important. Verb-noun collocations are the #1 source of errors for B1 learners. And it's not because the words are difficult, it's because the combinations are unpredictable. Make some work sounds logical, but English says do some work. Take a rest. English says have a rest. Give a look. English says have a look or take a look. These patterns need to be memorized, not guessed. When in doubt, always check your learner's dictionary.
Time for your first exercise. Read this text about Daniel and his future plans. Your task is to find and underline 11 collocations. Remember, a collocation is a natural word partnership that sounds right to native speakers. I'll read the text aloud for you once. My classmate Daniel is desperately worried about his future. He wants to enroll on a course, but can't make a decision about which subject to choose. I gave Daniel a ring yesterday and we had a long chat about his options. He'd like to study for a degree, but is afraid he won't meet the requirements for entry. His parents think he should do a course in business because he'd like to set up his own company. I agreed that would be a wise choice. Pause the video now. Can you find all 11?
Let's check your answers. Here are all 11 collocations underlined in the text. Desperately worried. Enroll on a course. Make a decision. Gave Daniel a ring. Long chat. Study for a degree. Meet the requirements. Do a course. Set up his own company. Wise choice. That's 10. And the 11th? Enroll on a course and do a course are both there. If you found 9 or more, that's excellent. The ones most learners miss are long chat and wise choice. They look simple, but they are collocations. Well done.
Exercise 2. This one is about verbs. The verbs have, take, give, make, and do are extremely common in English collocations, and they're often confused. Each sentence on the left uses one of these verbs. Your job is to match it with the correct word on the right to form a natural collocation. She's having. She's taking. She's giving. She's making. She's doing. 5 sentences, 5 options. Pause the video now and try to match them before I reveal the answers.
Here are the answers. She's having a party. We use have for social events. She's taking an exam. Notice it's take an exam, not make or do. She's giving a lecture. Give pairs with lecture, presentation, talk. She's making good progress. Make goes with progress, an effort, a decision. And she's doing her duty. Do collocates with duty, work, business. The key is that each verb has preferred partners, and they're not always predictable. This is exactly why recording collocations in context helps so much. This is the most challenging exercise in this unit, and one of the most useful. This text contains 8 collocation errors. Some are obvious, some are subtle. I'll read it aloud. In the morning, I made some work in the garden. Then I took a rest for about an hour before going out to do some shopping. It was my brother's birthday, and I wanted to make a special effort to cook a nice meal for him. I gave a look at a new Italian cookery book and decided to buy it. It has some totally easy recipes, and I managed to make a good impression with my very first Italian meal. I think my brother utterly enjoyed his birthday. 8 errors. Use your dictionary if you need to, and pause the video now to find them.
Let's check the corrections. And there's a surprise in here. Number 1, made some work. That's wrong. We say did some work. Number 2, took a rest. Should be had a rest. Now number 3, do some shopping. Actually, that one is correct. So is number 4, make a special effort. This is important. Not every phrase that sounds unusual is wrong. Number 5. Gave a look should be had a look or took a look. Number 6. Totally easy. We'd say really easy or perfectly easy. Number 7. Make a good impression. Correct again. And number 8. Utterly enjoyed. Should be really enjoyed or thoroughly enjoyed. How many did you find?
This final exercise brings everything together. You're looking at a dictionary-style entry for the verb lead. Your task is to identify all the collocations in the entry and then write one original sentence using each one. Here's what the entry gives us. Lead the project. Lead the discussion. Lead the investigation. And there's also an idiomatic expression. Lead someone by the nose, meaning to control them completely. Underline all the collocations first, then pause the video and write your own sentences before I reveal the examples.
Let's see the collocations and some example sentences. Lead the project. Our CEO was chosen to lead the project from the start. Lead the discussion. The professor agreed to lead the discussion on climate policy. Lead the investigation. A senior detective will lead the investigation. And my favorite, lead someone by the nose. Don't let advertisers lead you by the nose into buying things you don't need. Your own sentences don't need to match these exactly. What matters is that you used each collocation naturally. If you did that, you're building real fluency. Before we close today, I want to give you something to take with you. Open your Learner's Dictionary tonight or this weekend and look up these 4 words: desperately, pain, wise, and run. For each one, find 3 or 4 collocations. And here's the important part. Don't just list them. Write each collocation in a full sentence in your vocabulary notebook. You already know how to do this. We practiced it together today. That notebook entry is the beginning of your personal collocation bank. And the more you add to it, the more natural your English becomes.
Excellent work today. In this lesson, you've learned how to spot collocations in real text, how to use your dictionary to find them, how to record them in context, and how to group them to make them stick. And you've practiced all of that with 4 different exercises. That's a lot, and you did it. Remember, every time you read something in English from now on, you have a new skill. You can see the collocations. That is the difference between a learner and a speaker. If you want to keep going, the next lesson is right here, and it builds directly on everything you practiced today. See you there.
You now know how to spot collocations, record them in full sentences, and learn them through revision and grouping. Which collocation error surprised you most? Make, do, have, give, or take? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe for more lessons like this. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a donation link below. Now go find a new collocation in the wild. See you next time.